All right. Welcome. My name is Ray Allen, Allen. I'm not the basketball player who's made my name pretty famous, but I am an old botanist. And when I said old botanist, I'm 78 years old. But God has been good to me, and my health has been good enough to climb the mountains of China and plant trees. How did I get here today? Starts back in 1957. I was 15 years old. I got to attend the International Geophysical Year conference in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. And I was sitting there looking at all the people on the panel list, and they were a bunch of old guys, at least 40 years old. But there was one young man, just a little bit older than me, sitting near the end of the table. He was very quiet, making notes. And then it became his turn. And while the panelist was going on, they had the big screen behind. They were showing pictures of Africa and the North Pole and everything. The International Geophysical Year was a year where they started studying the planet. What are we doing to this planet? So finally the young man that's a little older than me stood up and walked through the mic, and all of a sudden the universe flashed on. And he didn't go through the parts and pieces of the planet Earth. He went through the Earth as a whole unit. His name was Dr. Carl Sagan. And he spoke of where we are today, that if we don't take care of this planet, all that's going to be left is the bacteria and viruses that we see today, and we'll all be living in caves. And we'll have bows and arrows and try to hunt animals to eat that have survived the viruses. We're going through that right now to some degree. So that kind of got me started into thinking what I needed to do with the rest of my life. And no matter what I tried to do, I always came back to the plants and trees, since I was born and raised on a farm, and my grandfather was a self-made botanist, self-taught, who worked on crops of all kinds. So I kept having to come back to where I'm at today. So I got a degree in botany, and in 1998 decided I'd better start working on trees to help the planet. So I am a part of Genesis Agroforestry. There were other companies I was involved with, which I owned prior to this, which was Emerald Energy, and another company called Eco Plantations International. Eco Plantations International got a chance to go meet the people in China, the Minister of Forestry, several provincial governors, scientists of all kinds, and we struck a deal to do a first pilot project in China with our trees. I live in Fresno, California. So we started out with 50,000 roots of the trees, shipped them to China. We followed them over, treated them with my special formulas, put them in a greenhouse near the city of Nanning. That is the southern capital of China, near the Vietnam border. So the project was very successful. So successful for the last 8 years, since 2012. My wife and I have made 48 trips to China to plant trees. What better life do I have as an old botanist to be able to travel the world, see exotic places, and plant trees, my trees. And why my trees? The universities in China and Vietnam and Queensland, Australia, University of North Carolina State University, UC Davis, Oklahoma State University have all studied the trees, and they have rated the tree as the #1 tree in the world for sequestration of carbon. The University of Beijing rated it 4 times better than their own species. That was the first aspect we were trying to do, was dramatically up their air quality. If you can take 4 times the amount of CO2 out of the air with a single tree, and you release 4 times the amount of oxygen, you start changing the problems we have in our atmosphere, which is the imbalance of too much CO2. Sometimes it's not economically feasible to reduce emissions, but you can always eat them if you plant the right species. So I'll get off the tree a little bit and go back to job creation, which is what this webinar is all about. In China today, because that was our #1 operation, we are in Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam, Malaysia, and probably will wind up in Thailand eventually. We have 3,000 permanent employees just working in the greenhouses. We have 30,000 tree planters temporarily 6 months out of the year planting trees. We even have the military planting some of our trees over on the very far western side near the Pakistan border, near the city of Chimo, which is on the other side of the Gobi Desert with no airport. It's a 9-hour drive doing 100 miles an hour. So I've made that trip a time or two. Then 2 years ago, we got to tour the manufacturing facility that they have built near the city of Zhengzhou, which is over in the northern central part of China. It covers 2 square miles. It employs 30,000 people. They take the logs in and make everything from Venetian blinds made out of wood to baby furniture to musical instruments to jewelry boxes to plywood that is fire resistant because the tree has such a high flash point, nearly 500 degrees, that doesn't burn very good even with a blowtorch.
Hey,
so
Ray,
some of the,
can I ask you, when you say 30,000 employees, doesn't that equate to some of the largest Fortune 500 companies around the world?
Yes.
Please continue.
Yes. So and those are permanent jobs. Most of the furniture and the plywood is exported to Europe. Remember, China imports about 90% of their lumber because they cut on all their forest many millennia ago. So the fastest growth rate of a tree is a megaflora tree. So they're not having you wait 35 or 40 years to get a tree big enough to cut for lumber. 5 years. If you're just going to use it for biomass, which it would make some of the finest biomass in the world, but the value of the lumber itself far exceeds that, so they're just taking the waste, the limbs, the treetops, trim ends, and using that to produce through a gasification process their energy to run the plants. So when you look at jobs, our little 8-year cycle over there of planting trees has created 60,000 jobs, plus 3,000 permanent in a greenhouse. This can be done anywhere in the world. The tree has the capability, after I got through with it, to grow where we wanted it to grow. Its limitations are 117 degrees to minus 30. It takes almost no water to grow. That's the reason they have adopted it into the Gobi Desert. And one of the things we look at also in our pre-planning of this is we don't want to use up all the good farmland to put trees on because we have a problem with extra CO2 in the air. So we started using some mining areas with the University of Beijing as testing on heavy metals and cleanup for phytoremediation, which it has worked very, very well. They also, where we do have it on some cropland, we intercrop. We put peppers and tomatoes and squash and soybeans in between the rows of trees. but you need to plant those east and west so that the trees do not shade out the intercrop. And you spread your rows out as far as wide as you want to.
Ray, that's fantastic. So what would you like to leave everybody with? And everyone will make sure that you have access to Ray and all the other speakers as well. What would you like to leave with everyone with on this call?
Well, I'm glad you asked me that. Victor, I want to direct all questions that's about the trees to you, okay? And what better life can I have in my autumn years than to travel with my lovely wife around the world and plant trees? I have seen more of China than any Chinese because I don't plant these downtown Beijing. These go to the smallest, remote little villages that have never seen a foreigner, much less an American. Stay safe and well, because we're going to need all of you.